Hello, Covenant. My name is Chris Williams, and I am the youth pastor here at Church on the Rock. I've been here for about 5 years now. I actually grew up in Southern California, and moved here because I really felt a calling on my life from the Lord to make my way to Texas, and so I've been here since about 2011, and I got saved when I was five years old. Kind of did my own thing as a high school student, and then after that, rededicated my life to the Lord at 22. And even in all those ups and downs, I think through it all, my grandmother was always my biggest supporter. She was always the biggest one that was in my corner, and I thank her so much for that. As a matter of fact, whenever I was going through times that were stressing me out, or I was having situations in my life, I would always think about these songs that my grandma would sing. These old church songs that I think at the time when I was young didn't really mean a whole lot to me. But as I'm getting older, as I'm spending more time with the Lord on my own, these songs are starting to take on new significance. There was one song in particular that my grandma would sing, and the chorus was, and don't worry, I'm not gonna sing it for you. I'll spare you that. But the chorus was, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in His glorious face or wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace." And there was something about that chorus that was really significant to me, that really stuck out to me, even as a young kid. The turning your eyes upon Jesus, the looking full in His face. There was something about that song. There was something about that part in the song that I got this sense, even as a young man, that just simply focusing on Jesus would take care of a lot of the stresses that I was going through, a lot of the problems that I was facing. That simply focusing on Jesus was going to always be a place of peace, and quite honestly, always be a place where you feel like you're able to conquer anything, or you feel like you're able to do anything in your own life if you just simply focus on Him. I can't help but think of that story in the Bible where Jesus is walking on the water. If you remember that story, the disciples are in the boat and they're on their way to the other side of the lake because Jesus said that they were going to make it to the other side of the lake. And so as they're making their way to the other side, it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning. If you look at the words in Scripture, that it says that Jesus began to walk on the water, and as Jesus was walking on the water, it says that the disciples initially were scared. They thought that they were seeing some type of ghost until they recognized that it was Jesus. Jesus Himself said, "It's me. Don't worry, guys. It's me." And Peter, at this point, was so amazed by what he was seeing, by what he was witnessing, that he actually said to Jesus, "If it's you, then tell me to come out there. I want to come out there to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come on, Peter." And so Peter gets out of the boat, okay, and he starts to walk on the water. So at this time right here, there are only two people that's recorded that have ever walked on water. And we're not talking about a shallow pool. We're talking about a deep lake. And these two men are defying physics as we know it, as they are walking on the water. So Peter is starting to walk towards Jesus. He's looking at Jesus. He's focused on Jesus at this moment. And it says in the story that as he's walking towards Jesus, it says that the winds and the waves begin to kind of move and become a little bit, more boisterous and things like that. And it says that Peter took his eyes off of Jesus. Now, what's really crazy about this is that before he took his eyes off of Jesus, he was able to do something miraculous in the midst of a storm. He was able to be steady when everything around him was unsteady. because he kept his focus on Jesus. He was able to walk and move on shaky ground because he kept his eye on Jesus. And so when I think about that, going back to that song, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face. And the song, it says, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim. You know, we're living in some really interesting times right now with coronavirus. And Lord, now I'm hearing news reports about this crazy hornet from Asia that's like, killing bees. And so now people are freaked out about that. And if you live in Lubbock, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've experienced this, where if you're here in Lubbock, it's like we're being overran with moths right now. Like moths are just everywhere. And it's like, what the heck is going on? Is it like the end of the world or what? There's a lot of stuff going on that has got us kind of worried and nervous and freaked out. But again, I love in the song, it says, if you turn your eyes upon Jesus and look full in his face, the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. As long as Peter was looking at Jesus, he was able to walk and be above the circumstances and the problems that were happening all around him, as long as he kept his focus on Jesus. Now, if that was just the end of the story, that would be great in and of itself. But how many of you know that there are times where it's easier than others to focus on Jesus? And that for some of us, maybe we're able to focus on him in a moment, in a situation, but sometimes the problems get so overwhelming around us that we do take our eyes off of Jesus, just like Peter did. Peter took his eyes off of Jesus, and when Peter took his eyes off of Jesus, it says in the story that Peter began to sink. And you know what? If the story ended there, that would be horrible, because how many of you know, because I've definitely been there, where I've taken my eyes off of Jesus and I started to let the problems around me consume me. And next thing you know, I am sinking under the pressure of the issues in my life. But you know what I love about that story too? Is after Peter began to sink, it has recorded in the story that Peter gave one of the shortest prayers ever recorded. Because prayer just means simply talking to God, right? And Jesus was not just a man, he was actually God. And so Peter actually, as he is sinking, Peter is talking to Jesus. He's praying. And as he's sinking, guess what his prayer was? Was it, oh Lord God, you are so great in the heavens, and I yield my life to you right now, and I ask you in this moment? No, he didn't have time for any of that. He's drowning. There's no time for a long prayer. Peter had time to only say this: help. That's it. Help. Shortest prayer in the Bible. You know what's funny about prayer? Is that the power of prayer has nothing to do with how long you pray or how big the words are you use. The power of prayer is in the sincerity of the moment. The power of the prayer is, are you sincere in your heart with who you're talking to, of what you're expressing your need and your concern to? That's where the power of the prayer comes in. Peter had time to say one thing: help. And what does it say happened in the story? Did Jesus walk over to him and he goes, oh, Peter, you got to pray longer than that, man. If you want my help, you need to come. Your prayer needs to be at least a paragraph. You need to throw in at least 6 or 7 Bible verses. And then once you do all of that, then I'll hear you. No. It says in the story that Jesus knelt down, pulled Peter up, and brought him back to his side. Now, mind you, this is all still happening while they're in the middle of a lake. They're not on dry ground. They're in the middle of the lake when all this is happening. And Jesus picks him up. His prayer was sincere, and Jesus heard his prayer. There's a lesson in that. Jesus heard his prayer. It was sincere. It was desperate. And Jesus went down and he picked him up. And the reason why I love that story is because even though I have these moments where I take my eyes off of Jesus and I begin to focus on the situation around me, and because of that, I'm starting to sink under the pressure of the situation, it's always good to know that all I have to do in those moments when I'm feeling overwhelmed is once again call out, cry out to Jesus for help. And when I do that, just the simple thing of praying, you know what that does? It instantly puts my focus back on him. And what happened when Jesus knelt down and picked up Peter? Peter's focus was instantly, once again, back on Jesus. And when that happened, guess what happened? Jesus pulled him back up out of the circumstance, out of the problem, and they were now together. And here's the best part, or one of the best parts I think of the story that a lot of people miss in that story. It says that after Jesus picked him up, after he was sinking, it says that they walked back to the boat together. Did you hear that? They walked back. Peter walked on water again, even after he failed, even after he took his eyes off of Jesus, even after he sank under the circumstances. He cried out for help, and he was able to do the miraculous again. But there was one difference. This time, when he walked on water, this time when he was above his circumstances, this time when his focus was on Jesus, he was much closer to him than he was the first time. And because he was much closer to Jesus the second time around, they were able to get back to the boat together. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Love it. Y'all have a blessed day. Thank you.